Assalamu alaikum and welcome back again to English poetry at the Islamic University of Gaza, Palestine. We are still talking about the sonnet. We'll be talking about the sonnet in every major poetry movement. Last time we discussed Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? Sonnet 18, we discussed the form, the content, the theme, the features, and many other things. Today we'll basically examine sonnet number 130, or as sometimes it's known as My Mistress' Eyes. But before I go to this sonnet, I'll go back again to sonnet 18 and examine issues or repeat issues you mentioned and I mentioned last time, so we highlight them. Remember we said Shakespeare's sonnets are 3 quatrains and one couplet. Sometimes in the sonnet we have 3 quatrains developing the same thing, the same image, in other words, in different ways, and then we have the turn or the volta or the twist at the very end. However, some sonnets actually do quatrain 1 and quatrain 2 highlight the issue or the crisis or the complication, and then the third quatrain twists the argument, like we have here in Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day, because this third stanza, the quatrain, but thy eternal. So everything dies, everything declines, but thy eternal beauty does not. Not because of something special in you, not because you're different, because I make you different. Because Shakespeare's poetry makes you different. Reading this text, we could stop at different things, like the word temperate. Now, the dictionary gives you 2 pronunciations. Temperate, 2 syllables, or temperate, 3 syllables. And because this rhymes with date, the long A, triphthong, A, it doesn't work 100%, the rhyme scheme. There's a bunch of possibilities here. Number 1, maybe during the time of Shakespeare, it was pronounced temperate. That's 1. Or number 2, some people say, for a poetic license, just to make it more musical, go for temperate. Something I don't like. Now, if this remains temperate, it means this is an imperfect rhyme. And still, if you go for 2 syllables, temperate, it makes 9 syllables. Again, creating double trouble here. And in my opinion, this is always, with Shakespeare, this is always connected with the meaning. So he's saying, thou art more lovely and more temperate, but the line in which he claims and states that she is more temperate, she's perfect, is imperfect in 2 things. And the perfection can only be achieved if she loves him back. Assuming that this is addressed to a woman, because many people take it for granted as Shakespeare's 126 sonnets are for a man. I don't care about this. I read this as a love poem. Okay, so this is number 1. Number 2, I always like to stop at the and the at the end. The 2 these we have here. The object pronoun for the addressee, the beloved, sort of. When we did the meter, we said, shall I compare thee? And this is unstressed syllable, weak syllable. Insignificant compared to the stressed syllable. However, when you go here, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Started unstressed, weak, insignificant, unimportant, short, and ended, because when we say a stressed syllable, it's a syllable that is strong, that is long, basically. It's given more emphasis in the way we speak. And this is the nature of the English language. And always, in an English poem, in poetry in general, even in Arabic poetry, the poem begins somewhere and it ends somewhere else, because this is basically where the poet is taking us. You begin this way, and then you end different, a little bit different, or sometimes dramatically different. I think there's a connection here between the woman, the addressee, being unstressed, insignificant, and ending
With a stress.
the stressed syllable being more important, more emphasized. Could be possibly, it's just poetic, yeah? Could be just there for no reason. I feel that, and this is what I like to do with poetry, like try to connect these tiny little things in the form, in the rhyme scheme, in the sounds, to the meaning. So what happened here? What changed? Why has the unstressed initially became stressed at the end? What changed in the poem? What do we have in the ending of the poem that we didn't have in the opening? Please.
I think before reading the poem, what the poem started, she had this is not important, but at the end of it,
Why isn't she important? Why wasn't she important in the opening?
because Shakespeare wants to make her important. So
Mm.
when he made it's just at the end, so he gives her the importance.
Okay, so Shakespeare gives her the importance here. Is there any condition, any tax, anything? It was just for free. What happens here, please?
I don't know about the beginning, but in the end, I think he's speaking while he's sure that he will give her a life forever, and he will make her live forever because of this poem.
There's confidence here. The
Yeah.
way Shakespeare speaks, he is confident, definitely. And so is he in the opening. He is also confident. I think that the confidence of the poet does not change. Something else changes. Please.
At first, she wasn't with him,
Uh-huh.
but in the end, he asking her to be with him, and this thing will make her more powerful and more.
Okay, eternal. I think this is, in many ways, true. Here he's trying to, convince her, to win her heart. She is not with him. And again, even like I was reading something the other night about the misunderstanding people usually have when they say this poem was written for a man. It doesn't necessarily mean Shakespeare wrote it for a man. It could be the fact that he wrote it for a man to send for a woman. Still, the addressee is basically a woman. Because again, when you had a patron at that time, the patron will give you protection, political, social protection, and and also sometimes would give you money. Why? Just to write poems. Please write me a poem here, write me a poem there, I want a poem here, I want to send the poem to this or that. So even if you take it for granted that the first 126 sonnets were written for a man, possible that some of them were written for a man to be sent to a woman. Okay, the other thing is, again, this but, the twist here, the volta, it's called. Sometimes we have it, usually we have it here, but sometimes we have it in a couplet. So the sonnet here goes for 8 lines saying that everything dies, every fair from fair sometime declines. Beauty is transient. It doesn't last forever. Everybody dies. Even the most beautiful time of the year. It's short, it's too hot, sometimes nature is cruel, destructive. But there is hope. There is a way out of this. And I also like to comment on the use of when. It could have been, by the way, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed, when in eternal lines to time thou growest, thy eternal something something. But Shakespeare delays this, the condition, which is beautiful. From an argumentative point of view, the logic of the poem is really beautiful. It's, again, deliberately calculated. So the but here creates a twist when you are about to lose hope, if everybody is going to die, if every beautiful thing just declines, what the hell are we doing here? There's a way. I can make you eternal. I can make you immortal. You can live, not only live in my poetry, you can also grow. Like now, everybody, we're here in Gaza, we're talking about this Shakespearean sonnet about the addressee. The when could have been an if. And when is more, this is confidence again, more certain. There's certainty here. And again, answering the question whether Shakespeare knew that he was great, he was writing great poetry, that he was destined for greatness. Definitely, he had a feeling that he would be a cool guy in the future, to be loved by every single student around the world. Okay. The other thing, before I go to the meter, the other thing is the fact that Shakespeare personifies death. Again, there's this thing about Shakespeare being obsessed with death. You'll find it everywhere in his works, in his plays. And many people try to connect between Shakespeare and Hamlet and examine how death, the undiscovered land from whose bourne no traveler returns. Now, clearly, Shakespeare, I don't want to say clearly, some people believe that Shakespeare felt bad and sorry and angry and frustrated because he's going to die. And I think many great people do feel the same. Why should I die? Why do bad people live forever and I, the good guy with a good heart and good poetry and good everything, going to die? So there's always this battle between Shakespeare and death. And if the battleground is in the sonnets, Shakespeare comes out the winner. So the personification of death here brings death down to earth as a human being, undermining the might of death, the strength of death. Saying, death is an ordinary human being that even can't brag. Even bragging can't be. Why? Simply because in eternal lines to time thou growest. The last point before I saw some of you raise their hands. Remember, this is a thought. This is an iamb. Unstressed and stressed. Almost the whole poem follows this iambic pentameter. Except maybe here and here and here and here. Creating something called in poetry a spondee. Spondee. Look at how tough the word is, spondee. Because a spondee is a thought with two stressed syllables. Rough winds do shake. Lives this, gives life. And again, we said something about the meter last time. We could differ or disagree and it would be okay, fine. I remember, what's her name, your friend here? She said, Rahaf, is it Rahaf? Yeah, Rahaf said something about lives being unstressed and this being stressed. Yeah, I can take that. I can understand this. Some people might say, no, lives this, both are stressed. That is possible. So there could be some disagreement, but you need to change the way you read the poem. So if you say, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? That's shall I, unstressed, unstressed. But usually people will say, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Giving emphasis for the pronoun I. Basically, rough winds do shake a spondee. Again, without even explaining this, when you say both syllables are stressed, gives more emphasis. Makes it tough. Gives it a higher voice. Rough winds. But if you, in your answers, in your exams, if you just say the spondee here is for emphasis, to emphasize something, that's not the perfect answer, because everything is there for emphasis. What does he emphasize? So you need to see what the poet is saying. He's saying that winds, storms, nature destroys beauty. And to say this, he number one, I commented on the rough winds, the sound that rough creates, the sound like a storm. And this storm is not only with it's also destructive. It destroys. So rough winds here, there is An emphasis on the fact that nature is destructive. That nature destroys beauty. The same with do shake. Some might say, no, I don't want to stress do. Okay, it's an I am. So rough winds do shake, or rough winds do shake, or do shake. Okay? The same thing happens in the end. Lives this. I like, again, Rahav's suggestion that lives might not be stressed, but this might, giving more emphasis to this, Shakespeare's poetry, over life. Because yes, Shakespeare's poetry outlives life. He died, she died, everybody died, but he still lives forever and ever. Not only living, but also growing. Okay, anything you want to say about Sonnet 18, please? Yeah.
Well, it was about when you mentioned who Shakespeare wrote the
Mm-hmm.
sonnet for. The thing that always confuses me is why do they always consider that the speaker is Shakespeare himself?
Yep.
Like,
You're right.
It could be a woman speaking to a man. It could be a man.
You're right.
The persona can be something completely different. It has somebody completely different. It hasn't to express Shakespeare's own thoughts.
You're completely right. The persona is not necessarily the poet. The persona could be a fictional person, and this is true here, true in fiction, in short stories, and in novels. But I think at that time it was taken for granted that the speaker is basically a man, because it was taken for granted that only men could write poetry at that time. But yeah, good point. Thank you very much.
So it's beautiful overall, but I took it from a feminist perspective. The first one, he said, shall I convert thee? So he's politely suggesting or taking her permission. And then in the line 12, when he says, when in eternal lines, after he owns her and he gets what he wants, when eternalized to time thou growest, he's saying that he's like giving her a favor, that he's eternalizing her in his poetry. But I think that she doesn't need him. It's not like he's dealing with the women that like his priority, I'm not sure, okay, and that he owns her. Okay, you are mine, I have the chance, either I want to eternalize you or I don't. So it's not that he likes the woman as a woman, he likes her because he can control her. He can use her to show how good he.
Yeah. There's this, but again, also, I don't want to assume that he won her heart here. This is all still an assumption, because where is the woman? Like, thank you for raising this point. Where is the woman in the text? She's not there. She's not responding to him. She's not saying, okay, maybe she said, okay, I'll think about it. Give me just 3, 4, 10 years. I don't think there is any indication in the poem that she's saying, okay. So yeah, you can read this as a feminist and say that this is not good, this is anti-feminist. Okay, we have something, a parody, Noha? Please write parodies. Parodies are fun. Let's see how things go.
You asked where is the woman in Shakespeare's sonnet, and here I am going to talk to you about the woman. I'm sorry
Nice.
for my voice. So here I wrote it as a feminist, from a feminist point of view. I didn't really like the fact that Shakespeare is boasting. Let's not say Shakespeare. The persona keeps boasting about how he's going to immortalize her in his poetry. I don't really like this, and also how he only loves her because she's fair.
Can you speak up?
Okay, so basically here I'm a strong, independent woman. Okay. Shall I compare thee to a boasting bear? Thou art more desperate and more voracious. Bold men describe a lady as fair, and imprison her in lines as if gracious. Sometimes too reckless the evolved ape behaves, and often is his mind detached from the brain. And every fair confronting fair sometime caves, by chance or any human that is sane. But thy eternal vanity shall not be destroyed, except by the mortals a fair lady owest. Nor shall thou bragger's soul be void, unless it more dominance showest. So long as woman can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives I, and I gives life to thee.
Okay, nice. Thank you very much. That's a really, really good parody. Okay. Let's move very quickly to this poem. Just, again, Shakespeare making the same point in different ways. And this is interesting about Shakespeare. Since brass nor stone nor earth nor boundless sea, but sad mortality, being an issue that Shakespeare struggles with, oversways their power, etc. The point I want to make in this sonnet is just the couplet. Look at the couplet here at the end. It's similar to sonnet 18. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Here he says, oh, none. Nothing is going to live forever. Unless, going for the condition, you will live if, when. Unless this miracle have might, that in black ink, what's black ink? My poetry, this, my eternal lines. That in black ink my love may still shine bright. You could, I'm not sure if you're interested in doing research on poetry, you could do research on Shakespeare's couplets, see what they say. And if they say the same thing, different ways. Another sonnet I like by Shakespeare is sonnet 73, I guess. Again, we're not going to study it in detail, just I want to make a couple of points. Number one, we have the quatrain here, quatrain 2 and quatrain 3, and then the couplet. Look at how each one begins. That time of year thou mayst in me behold. What's mayst? May. That's why some versions of the sonnet will usually drop the st for thou. But they will keep the thee and thou and the th. In me behold, what's behold? See, that's a poetic word, it's a beautiful word. Behold, when yellow leaves, or none or few do hang. I don't know why, but I have never written a more beautiful line than this one in the description. When yellow leaves, or none, or few do hang. You know, when yellow leaves, what time of year is this? That's autumn. So he's describing autumn, and autumn is the end of the year. Upon those boughs which shake against cold, and I like the use of shake, shake, shake every time in Shakespeare. That's half his name. Upon those boughs which shake against the cold. And look at how, it's not cold yet here in Gaza, but look at this personification. Personifying the boughs, the branches as very old people shaking because of the cold. Look at this image. Fascinating. Beautiful. Sad, but beautiful. It's not people shaking here. It's so cold that even the branches are shaking against the cold. Which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs were late, the sweet birds sang. Look at the sad, this musical here. But it's no longer there, the singing. Sang. It's in the past. They no longer sing. And look at the tough beginning here of the line, like the spondia, just bare ruined choirs were laid, the sweet birds sang. So the ending of the year, autumn, fall. And now the second stanza, quatrain, goes for, in me, again, thou seest the twilight of such a day. And twilight is, what time of the day is it? Basically, the ending of the day. The twilight is the ending of the day. In me thou seest the twilight of such day, as after sunset fades in the west, which by and by black night doth take away death's second self. And again, many people criticize Shakespeare for saying the obvious in many unobvious ways. You know, sometimes you make fun of people who say Mr. Obvious. Shakespeare is Mr. Unobvious all the time. He doesn't like shortcuts. What's death's second self? Sleep. Sleeping, yeah. Why don't you say sleep, Shakespeare? Oh, other people, ordinary people say sleep. I don't. Death's second self that seals up all in rest. Look at the beautiful euphemistic terms here. Rest could be a pun. Let's take a rest and rest in peace. Rest in peace. So this is the ending of the day. And then in me again, thou seest the glowing of such fire, that on the ashes of his youth doth lie. Ashes is the ending of the fire. The ending of the year, the ending of the day, the ending of the fire. Probably here symbolizing passion and love.
هو actually كمان هي المفاتن يعني
Possible, yeah.
يعني the end of the life.
The end of life, possible, yeah. Yeah. That on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed wherein it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. How the fire eats itself. And again, we're all going to die. Everything is going to die. We come the beautiful couplet here. Thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong. I know, grammar was not totally standard, even the spelling with Shakespeare. You will be surprised if you see the original sonnet, how it was written during the time of Shakespeare. You will recognize some of the words, but not most of, like some of them will be not recognized in the letters. The spelling was horrible. But don't take this as an excuse, telling me in the exam that you're writing like Shakespeare. So this could be stronger, right? Grammatically now we better say stronger, not more strong. Thy love more strong. So because everything dies, I think we should love each other more strong. Love has to be stronger. And that again, twisting the argument, turning it upside down. To love that well which thou must leave ere long. Ere is, what's ere in Shakespeare?
Before.
Before. Basically, this is one syllable, this is two. You'll find words like in, yeah? Even, two syllables, in one syllable, or, also or instead of over, oft instead of often, okay? Now let's move to sonnet 130, and we'll study this in detail. Somebody please read. Somebody? Okay. Go on, Dream. Speak up.
My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than Euphemisms red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are done? If hers be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses, damask'd, red and white, with no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music had a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go, my mistress, when she walks, treats on the ground, and yet, by heaven, I think my lover's hair, as any she belied, with false compare.
Okay, nice reading. One more, please.
My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are done? If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damask red and white, but not such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go, my mistress when she walks, trees on the ground, and yet by heaven I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare.
One more, please.
My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her braids are done? If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damask'd, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go, my mistress, when she walks, trees on the ground. And yet, by heaven, I think my love are rare.
As rare?
As rare. As in she
belied
with false
compare. Thank you. My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is far more red than her lips red. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun? If hers be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damask'd, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet will I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. And yet by heaven I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. I am not sure how you reacting or you reacted to this poem, reading it at home and listening to it on YouTube. It always comes, even when I teach it almost every year. And every time I read it, I feel this kind of shock, unexpected of Shakespeare. This is not the sonnet we read about, we hear about, the love poem exalting the beloved, raising her up above all natural beauties, all human beauties. To come to this, what on earth is Shakespeare doing? What's different this time? What is special about this sonnet? Let's just talk a little bit here and highlight certain issues before we discuss. So my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. This could be the opening, like, shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Her eyes are even more beautiful. But again, it goes against our expectation. Coral, coral, the Red Sea, coral is far more red than her lips red. And grammatically we say, than her red lips. Some of you will claim that Shakespeare is doing this for the rhyme scheme. But again, this is Shakespeare. He could have said, red than her red lips. I don't know. And then he said here, something hips, Would work. It would fine. And Shakira will find this funny because hips don't lie. So the choral here, so there's basically something with Shakespeare, some kind of changing the word order of the natural grammar. And again, this is why I hope that after reading these two sonnets, you will come closer to Shakespeare. I know you're also doing Elizabethan drama. You come closer to understanding more and more of Shakespeare. He does this. He plays with the syntax. Not only, again, don't please just say for emphasis. Don't just please say for the rhyme scheme, because Shakespeare can make anything rhyme. For God's sakes, the man coined and made up like 2,000 words. He can do something here. So coral is far more red than her lips red. Her lips are not that red, especially compared to coral. If snow be white, and snow is white, why then her breasts are done? She isn't as white as snow. She's not white. And again, whiteness associated with, classically with beauty. She's brownish, seemingly. If hairs, and I find this very funny, if hairs be wires, if hairs are wires, then black wires grow on her head. And I don't know how you would react. I usually test little girls with this, and I tell her that sharik manfoush or sharik salik jelly or something like this. And even little girls wouldn't take this. They would find this offensive, and insulting. Black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses damask'd, red and white. There are no such roses. You know, a beautiful person, a beautiful woman, you just liken her cheeks to white roses, pink roses, red roses. But here he's saying, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And again, I think there is here a pattern. Shakespeare is creating a pattern. He's not only like just, diverting, subverting our expectations. He's also see I see, lips red. Changing the orders of things. In her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. This could mean she stinks, but it just could mean she has a natural human breath. Not necessarily somebody who has eaten, a huge chunk of an onion. But reeks is also not a compliment. Yeah, you say, you stink. But again, I don't want to take reek as just meaning stink, although it could be. I love to hear her speak, yet will I know. And I think here, will I know is grammatically okay, but the more natural word order would be, I know well. So is there a pattern of changing things? That music hath a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. Like, beautiful women, described usually as goddesses, as angels that don't walk, don't touch the ground. They just float, they glow, they glide. I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, she treads upon the ground. She's like any other human being. She walks on the ground. And again, so far, this is interesting. It's just one unit highlighting the imperfections, the flaws, so to speak. Although I don't, agree that there should be fixed standards of beauty, or what makes beauty. And then yet, by heaven, by God, wa Rabbi sama, he's swearing here. And again, I said this in another class, and one student said that Shakespeare was a religious man. I don't think Shakespeare was a religious man. I think that Shakespeare was not only that, but he was deliberately and consciously distancing himself from religion and from. I understand that God is one syllable and heaven two. But you'll be surprised. You will, of course, necessarily find influences of the Bible, of Christianity in Shakespeare, but you will be amazed at how sometimes you feel that Shakespeare is consciously trying to distance himself and detach himself from Christianity. Look at his stories, for example. None of his plays is based on a biblical story, right? And yet by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. It's like I want you to do this, experiment. Like, go to your friend, any of your friends, and tell her, for example, like, I know you're not punctual, you're a liar, you're lazy, you're a huge eater, you don't like pizza, and count like 30 things, and then, but I like you. That's devastating.
It's not. Actually, I would like somebody to say that to me.
Like that, you're all the horrible things in the world.
I know that they appreciate me despite all of my
Imperfections. No, okay, everybody's imperfect. But if you're talking to me, like, why are you just digging, excavating even for things that people don't know? And we see this all the time, like in comic shows, like how people try to compliment somebody that he's like, okay, say that he's not punctual, sometimes he's late, he likes pizza like too much, but he's a really good something. But if you count like 100 flaws, you're making me unacceptable in any situation. So I'll ask here a couple of questions. Number one, what do you think of the tone? Do you take this as a serious poem? And how would you react to this as a woman? Or how would you react to this as a woman? And then the second question, do you think that the tone is serious or comic or light? Is this a light-hearted, Please.
Well, first of all, when I first read it, I was really shocked. I didn't really understand the whole concept of it. And then I realized that he's actually like maybe describing a very ordinary lady. Like I think that if I could draw this person or this lady, I would see her as a normal lady.
Not stick drawing, of course.
Not stick. Okay, it's my thing too, by the way.
Uh-huh.
So the thing is that he's really describing an ordinary lady, but it's somehow offensive. Like you are writing poetry, and poetry or sonnets are supposed to be about love and appreciation. So why are you doing this? So I think this is why I wouldn't take it I wouldn't take it as a real poem. I would take it more of maybe like a parody or something as comic.
Mm-hmm. So this is a comic poem more than a serious poem. Like, but well, I'll come back to the point here. I think we have, like you're saying, I don't want to take it as a serious poem. I'll take it as a comic or a parody. We'll come back to this point because there's a misunderstanding about what parody is. Please.
Add about the same point, that he's failingly trying to sound funny. This poem kind of reminds me of jokes that people make, like, okay, I saw this woman, she was wearing makeup, and then when she removed the makeup, she became like a man. And they would say this assuming that they're funny. And this poem reminds me of this.
So unfunny?
He's failingly trying to sound funny, but he's not.
He's not. This is unfunny. Okay, good. Listen, you can. I like Shakespeare. You can trash him. I'm not going to judge you. So feel free.
For me, actually, I really like it for that reason. First one, I think Shakespeare was trying to try a new hero for his poets. So he was making
To try, sorry, a new.
to make a new hero in his sonnets to appear.
Okay.
And the normal person, the average person. This is first thing. Second, I like it because he started saying the bad things of the women. So he says that I accept you the way you are, even with your bad things and your good things. And
Yeah, but you say despite the shortcomings, but you don't list 100 of them. If you count 100 of them, if you have the time to count 100 shortcomings, come on.
he actually highlighted the more important things in a woman. He highlighted the lips, he highlighted the hair, and
In a negative way.
and no, it's not actually negative. He was showing that she's a normal person, and I like it the way you are.
Okay, he could have said that. He could have said that you are an average person. Like Trump would say, she's a 5 or a 3 or a 4. Please.
I don't like it because it's like they said that even of her bad, yeah. I mean, if your legs are not red, if you are not white, if even of all these things, I love you. It's like he puts her in a frame of beauty that he is like making a favor that I like you despite.
But
all
where's the frame of beauty? There's no beauty here, like
No,
conventional.
The frame of beauty that her lips should be very red
Hmm.
and she must be white and these things. I would say that I would appreciate it more if he said more serious things that even, for example, if you are like more important thing than
Like what? Can you give examples? What are more important to be praised in a woman, in your opinion?
like things in her personality.
Okay, that's an excellent point. This is a poem highlighting, showcasing the physical appearance of women, saying this is what men appreciate. And at the same time ignoring altogether the fact this is a human being, a personality and a character, the brain, the intellectuality of the woman.
Yeah, I just want to say that.
Thank you. Good point.
This is sonnet number 130, and Shakespeare wrote 129 before. So
100.
29. So now he's.
Say again.
This is the sonnet number
Okay.
130.
And he wrote 154. Type, okay, yeah.
I think he's now tired of writing and praising.
He's tired. He's tired of writing and praising, so he's changing. I never looked at it from this. Why didn't he get tired at sonnet, for example, 140 or 50? But yeah, I take your point. But by the way, some people might find it also, listen, some people believe that this order of the sonnets is not probably the right order that Shakespeare wrote them in. But that is an interesting point. Like, it's time for change. It's time for change,
I
please.
think you should also look the role of the woman which led him to write this, because it's maybe she was obsessed about perfection and he's convincing her.
He's destroying her. He's bringing her down.
No, he's convincing her that he doesn't care about these things and she's
Okay.
perfect.
She's perfect the way she are. She doesn't have to be obsessed with, filters and Snapchat filters and dog filter and please.
I think that it is offensive to her. And
Mhm.
it's like granting her his love, even though she is like is not like the great or the perfect woman in poets. But what about his appearance and about his appearance? So
His own appearance.
yeah, so he's talking about her as if she is like a trash, and he is offensive for her.
But what I notice is that you totally agree that these are shortcomings. Are they?
She was born with them. It's not her fault. No.
How is it not like if somebody doesn't have fair hair? What should they kill themselves?
There are differences, not
We
like
come back to the beauty standard.
Because the traditional standards of beauty at that time: white, fair hair, possibly red lips, white skin, etc., etc. So is Shakespeare trying to, again, criticize and attack these standards of beauty rather than trashing the woman?
Okay, I said maybe that I would like a friend to tell me about that they respect me despite my shortcomings. But I wouldn't like a lover to describe me that way, but at the same time, I don't find it that offensive, you know? It's okay, he did it's not completely like a good poem, but it's not really that offensive as the girls are describing.
Who thinks it is offensive? Oh, that's very few of you. Who thinks it's not offensive? That's also very few of you. So there are many neutrals here. Okay, please.
Some things are offensive and some things are fine.
Offensive or not?
Offensive. I think, but I have another opinion. I think he loves her, but because he didn't able to reach her, he said all these imperfections to console himself, like not read as a choral or.
So is this about him too, consoling himself?
Yeah, because he loves her and he didn't able to reach her.
Please.
Who said all these things are imperfections? None of us has red cheeks. None of us has an eye like a sun. He's being 100% realistic.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is offensive. I think he's not like Sarah. He's not framing her in a beauty frame or something. It's normal.
She's not a model. She's an average woman with these things. But again, like, do you think Shakespeare's trying to be realistic rather than offensive?
Yeah.
Is he trying to be realistic?
No, I don't know. I think because he said, and yet by heaven, I think he loved her, and rare, his love is rare. So no, she is not ordinary, because if she is ordinary, he will love her like any other man will love any other woman.
So offensive or realistic? Okay.
I agree with Hayat that nobody is as perfect as
The imaginary fictional beloved.
But still, this could have been said in a nicer way. Like, he called her as wires.
This is very blunt. This is really very
You should have
blunt.
said curly hair. You shouldn't have said reeks about her.
And you don't count like 10 horrible, devastating things. You just say one thing, and probably 10 sonnets, one in each. But this is too much.
Maybe he was trying to call for equality, even like girls who have Negro hair or girls with not a white skin, they deserve to be loved.
Why wouldn't people love those? Aren't we doing the same thing? Aren't we committing the same horrible thing ourselves? So, okay, let's again see here. There's this possibility that this poem is a parody. And what is parody? We'll see in a bit. But can you just very quickly, what do you think? What is parody? Say again. Okay, again, you're also highlighting the comic element. Parody is imitation. an imitation of another literary text, another genre, another poet. Basically in a comic way. So this could sound light and comic and funny, or an attempt at being funny. Meaning we can take this as Shakespeare trying to criticize the way women were perceived, the way sonnets were written, the way women were represented. Perhaps Shakespeare is criticizing the mainstream standards of beauty at that time, that a woman, to be appreciated, a woman has to have all these things. But some people might not like this because they also feel that Shakespeare himself is falling for the same thing. He is also, because he's indicating that, he's saying, you don't have these things, but I love you. He's not saying these are not, in a way, these are not the real standards of beauty, and beauty is relative, and everybody, can see beauty in the things they love. He's not saying this. He's saying you don't have these standards of beauty, but, and not only but, yet, I swear to God, by heaven, I like you, I love you.
I think you're rare.
I think you are rare. And there could be an implication here. Shakespeare doesn't highlight the character of this woman, but rare here, when he says, like, physically, she's not that beautiful, probably she's rare because of her mind and her personality. But it's not clearly stated here. Could be implied, because she is rare. Her love is rare. As any, she belied with false compare. She can't be compared to false things. These things are false, like you said. Who has eyes like the sun? But again, this is poetry. This is metaphorically speaking. Now the point I want to make about this sonnet being a parody. Actually, this is why we're discussing this poem, basically for this parody part. And don't forget that Shakespeare himself used some of these beauty standards to frame women, making this text also self-parody. So is Shakespeare mocking himself, making fun of himself?
Yeah.
Wow, he must have been very confident. He's writing something and he's also parodying himself, making fun of himself. He doesn't wait for others to mock him. He's mocking himself. But also mocking what we call courtly love. The traditional courtly love, the way it was, the way women were perceived and represented in this kind of love. And yes, parody can be comic and funny, sarcastic sometimes. We'll see in John Donne how parody can be also a very serious genre. Extremely serious. Not only about the message, it destroys. Nowadays we see the comedy shows. Look at American politics. Every night you have like so many comedy shows. The news is now comic. Because comedy, parody, these genres, they, number one, draw our attention to the fact that there is an alternative. There is a possibility of another reality. That this reality is not fixed, that you can change it. I'm showing you in my poetry, in my stand-up comedy. So what Shakespeare is doing here is basically he is shattering, he is destroying the mainstream standards of frames of beauty. He's showing women and people that there are other alternatives, that there are other possibilities. He's inviting us by subverting, by turning the standards of beauty upside down, giving us another world view that people probably didn't think of, outside probably poetry maybe. So that's why I take this as a serious, it sounds lighthearted, but if you examine it from a parody point of view, it sounds very serious. It sounds, again, like Shakespeare himself, who is doing the same thing, is trying to protest, or at least attract women's attention to the fact that there are other possibilities, that you shouldn't be taking these frames for granted. You can change them. And that's why I highlighted these things. Lips read, see I, will I know. And again, how the poem came against our expectation. I think this subversion here, this change of the order, is an invitation that the existing order in the society, the social constructions of women, of beauty, can be changed. And I also like how he used the word compare as a noun at the end. It should be with false comparison. I know compare can be used as a noun, but not a very common usage. I checked the Merriam-Webster for the etymology of the word, and it says, and I find this very interesting, the first time it was used as a noun was 1589. Wow, that was like around the time Shakespeare was writing sonnets. So again, this is stretching, a lot of stretching, but did Shakespeare use the verb compare as a noun to indicate to women, to the audience, to readers, that you can change things? You don't have to take things as they are. Here, I am using verbs as nouns, swapping the word order, using the noun before the adjective, and it's now your time to destroy again the given mainstream constructs of the society. Women don't have to be taken for granted. Women don't have to be taken in these frames imposed upon them by society and by men. This could be a lot of stretching, but I want you to think of this in this light. As a parody, Shakespeare doing this stuff. Please.
I don't find this sarcastic at all, just like you said. I think that he is criticizing the other poets of his time. Because at that time, if you read the poems, it's like they describe usually their mistresses as Snow White, lips as red as wine.
And again, taking women for granted, for like, even if the woman doesn't have these things, he would be like, he would be tricked into a particular.
At the same time, that's really degrading and depressing for other women, because not everyone is blessed with beauty, and beauty is also considered a curse.
But again, what is beauty? Don't forget this. What is beauty? No, but I'm saying that because this is a significant point. Beauty, there's not like, again, like in Arabic we say القرد في عنام وغزال, and it's the same here. Like every woman sees her kid as the most beautiful kid, not only because he or she is the kid, but because beauty is relative. It's not fixed. The standards are not fixed.
I know the standards.
The society usually has.
At that time, the society had fixed.
And this is what Shakespeare is
like this,
attacking.
beautiful.
I agree. I totally agree.
When you give this image to other girls and women, they will feel themselves lesser and degraded. So
True.
I'm not saying that this is exactly praising her or
True.
anything.
Okay, I like your point. Thank you very much. More.
Actually, I still insist on the idea that Shakespeare was calling for equal between normal people and people, girls who have white skin and this. And he was trying to call the normal average girl to have confidence, self-confidence, because at the end he swore. So usually when we swear, that means that the person himself doesn't believe in him in self-confidence. So he was trying to push normal girls to have the confidence that they are beautiful too.
Okay, nice. More, please.
I think that Shakespeare wants to tell the woman that you are trying to show your best to men. And this is, it's not a good
Don't do this. Wow, I like this.
Yes, because every woman, it's beauty in her own, it's a beauty haven't any criteria, things. So he wants to tell, maybe the woman he spoke about her felt that she is not beautiful because of the society, and we tried to tell her there's no one beautiful in this world.
Okay, I like also your point here, but again, Shakespeare, he could have done it a little bit differently. Yeah, that's too much.
Yes,
That's you also putting this woman down. But again, this sarcastic, this parody aspect is what I like about the poem, exaggerating things sometimes. Let's just move a little bit to the things I highlighted. So the structure of the sonnet, if you go back, 3 quatrains, developing the same idea, and then the twist comes at the end. The rhyme scheme is perfect: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, G. There's no imperfection here. The tone can be taken differently. Some of you might take this as a serious poem. Some of you might take this as a comic, light poem. But again, comedy doesn't necessarily mean it's not serious or there is nothing happening there. Look at these questions. I want you to think about them when you go home. We'll share. We can discuss some of them on our Facebook group. How can this be taken as a parody or self-parody? What does that tell about Shakespeare? Like, again, this is like he's being a social critic and also a literary critic. See the point? He's being a literary critic, as if, again, he's saying that, don't stop doing this in your sonnets, come on, in his own way. He goes back to something else. How would a woman feel reading this? Would a woman feel comfortable, uncomfortable? And I like how you give me different opinions. Again, whatever opinion you believe in, just go for it, support it with textual evidence, and you're good to go. Where is the woman in the text? And this is the point I want to go back to. The huge difference between shall I compare thee to us, one of the major differences, shall I compare thee to a summer's day and my mistress' eyes, is what? Yeah? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?
That woman isn't shown.
Say again.
That woman isn't in this poem.
Here?
Other poem. Yeah, shall I compare?
We don't have the woman here.
But it's not clear.
Okay.
It's not clear.
What about this poem?
It's clear that he talks about a woman and the beauty of a woman. And we have her, she. So
Mm.
we have the pronoun that.
What pronoun do you have here? Shall I? Thee. Okay. What I feel is that sonnet 18, the woman is present. He's talking to her face. He's talking to her. Shall I compare thee? Thou art. Gives life to thee. Yes, she is silent or silenced. Probably Shakespeare says shushing her like I'm shushing you now. But he's present because he's talking to her. Please, any poem you read, look at the tenses, look at the pronouns. Try to locate and position the speaker and to examine who the addressee is. In Sonnet 18, the woman is there, at least fictionally speaking. In Sonnet 130, the woman is not there. She is absent and also silent or silenced. So he's using the third person pronoun here. She, her eyes, she. She's absent. And again, what does this say about the whole sonnet? Like, you know, he can't even stand in front of her and read the poem, recite the poem. Does he know that she's going to, I don't know, punch him?
If they say that this is offensive, he cares about her and he does not want to say all these things in her face.
But it's even worse if he's saying behind her back. Like, who's he saying this to? Her mother-in-law?
He's saying it anyway. Maybe she felt offensive, so he wouldn't say it.
I want you to think of this. Why is the woman absent? Totally absent. Okay, nice. Where is the woman in the poem? Is that enough? I want you to try to see how the sonnet turns at the couplet there. I'll just go through this very quickly. We can comment on this online. So, in parody, Shakespeare here is turning the traditional standards of beauty on their head. Not on their head. He's turning things upside down. Inside out. Trying to change the social constructs. The beloved's imperfections here, rather than her perfections, are highlighted and emphasized. Idealistic love, it seems, like courtly love, is being mocked, which again breaks new ground. if Shakespeare is, again, assuming to be a social critic and a literary critic, that is really interesting. Can we find more of this in Shakespeare? Because, by the way, if we go to Hamlet, Shakespeare always makes fun of himself. Because he was always accused of having these long monologues, boring, speeches, etc. In Hamlet, you'll find many times Shakespeare making fun of himself as a playwright. So this is significant to me. Breaks new ground and allows people to reconsider the social constructs imposed upon them by offering a possibility, a new worldview. And this is parody, not always comic. We'll see this later on. So we go back to the sonnet, just to summarize in 2 minutes. 14 lines, love poem, Italy, Petrarch. I was surprised that Petrarch doesn't end in a vowel like almost all Italian words. And I assume that this man is originally, I don't know, an Arab, because it turns out that in Italian he is Petrarca. So still we go back to the beautiful Italian vowel at the end. And Dante, 14th century, the sonnet migrated to England and it was brought by Henry Howard and Sir Thomas Wyatt in the 16th century. The Petrarchan sonnet, just as a reminder, has 2 parts: the octave, 8-line stanzas, the sestet, 6-line stanzas, and the rhyme scheme. Here we have the octave presenting the crisis, the dilemma, and the sestet trying to make sense of the world, present a closure or a resolution. With Shakespeare, however, the sonnet rhymes differently. A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, G. With Shakespeare, get to GG and you'll find. No GG, no Shakespeare. Shakespeare's sonnets consist of 3 quatrains and 1 couplet. Sometimes line 9 is the volta or the twist, and sometimes the couplet itself is the twist. 10 syllables, 5 feet each line. Iambic pentameter like 95% of the time or 90% of the time. The iambic pentameter is similar to the conversational tone of English, some people think. That's why almost 80% of English poetry, this is a number I just made up, is iambic pentameter. The sonnets usually develop an idea in each of the 3 quatrains, and then the rhyming couplet offers a closure or a resolution. There's so many themes in Shakespeare, and that's why Shakespeare not only experimented on the form and the rhyme scheme, he tried to expand the theme itself. Not only pure love, the woman and how she behaves and how she looks, to include time, mortality, immortality, transience of beauty, lawlessness of life, destructiveness of nature, inevitability of death, immortality of art and his poetry, which is really interesting. Going to the form, the sonnet's form is rigid, and rigid not in a negative way here, like it's very strict, it's highly calculated, something that allows the poet to focus his topic, or her, of course. Basically, the highly calculated structure brings order to the disorder of life, tries to control the uncontrollable. It says next. Sometimes the neatness of the sonnet presents a stark contrast to the harsh reality. It's neat, it's order, it's organized, but reality is harsh and tough. So presents a stark contrast to the harsh reality of life that does not conform to an ordered pattern. Pattern, honor beauty, or respect genius. Life does not conform to order. Life does not honor beauty. Life does not respect genius. And that's why Shakespeare is trying to confront this. I should live forever. And he does in his poetry. The form requires compression of ideas in such a way where the topic is highly intensified. And this is finally what I wanted to say about the sonnet. We will keep going back to the sonnet. I'll stop here. Next class we have Christopher Marlowe's The Passionate Shepherd, a very interesting poem. We're still doing Renaissance poetry. Thank you. If you have questions, please stay behind.